Welcome everybody. We're talking about SQL Server 2005, end of service, end of life, end of support. Depends on which EO and then whatever letter you want to put after that. Talking about strategies, and we're going to walk through a quick summary of some of the strategies about moving to 2014 or 2016 or SQL Azure. So let's get going from here. A little bit about us. If you're not familiar with who Pragmatic Works is, we do have 3 tiers of offering. There's a bunch of this on the demo or on the opening slides that Liz was running through, but we do sell some products, services, and training. My contact information is there, as well as sales contact information if you want to know more about what we offer. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the impact that's going to happen with the end of support for 2005. It happens in April 12, 2016. So if you have not started planning yet, you are not totally in the minority. There are a number of folks out there running 2005 for a variety of reasons. And those reasons include, for whatever reason, the product you're using, you've chosen not to upgrade. So if you choose not to upgrade, you're running on a 2015 platform. We are also, we often see systems that are running that people didn't really know existed. They just kind of show up and they're out there, and all of a sudden they're doing an analysis of their environment, and they find 2005. Occasionally they find 2000. So we got a number of those scenarios. And the big thing that's going to happen here in 2016, and on the April date that you see there, Microsoft is no longer going to provide extended support for the platform. So it's already been out of standard support for a while, but now we're at truly the end of life for the project. Now, the big things to keep in mind are that this is going to open you up for security issues, stability issues, and anything that you would expect to be resolved through service packs, hot fixes, and so on. So none of those will happen. Microsoft committed to security updates and hot fixes through 2016, or through April of 2016, and that is it. We're now in a position where we're going to be looking at what the risk of, to your business will be, and what that's going to look like in this scenario. So a couple things. If you run in sectors such as finance, medical, or other highly regulated industries, it is likely that this will take you out of compliance for whatever data is there. In particular, you're looking at HIPAA compliance, FINRA, PCI, anything that requires you to keep your security updated on the platforms you are on. In particular, that will help you fall out of compliance. In some cases, the platform you're working is fairly well enclosed, so you may not think no security risks. However, if I'm in anyone's shoes who's looking at this, the risk to my security in the platform is substantial, and we really don't want to put that risk on our business and be in that situation. With Microsoft not providing support, that'll be the shortest support call you've ever had with Microsoft. Hi, what version are you running? The answer to the question is 2005. They say, we no longer support that. When do you plan to upgrade? We'll provide support at that point. So that, those are the things that you need to definitely keep in consideration as you move forward into this year, as we really are looking at for 1 quarter of time to move platforms over. So let me start looking at what we can target and why. So this is about building strategies. So we're not going to go through hardcore details, but we're going to you'll find that this is the beginning of a series of blog posts and webinars around this topic as we move into 2016. But targeting SQL 2014. This is at the survey at the beginning, 40% of you are targeting this already. It makes sense. If you're like a lot of businesses, you have out there this rule that says, hey, I'm on 2014. How do I, what is it going to take for me to get to, Service Pack 1? I want to target that. Why do I want to target that? I want to target that because it made it past Service Pack 1, so Microsoft must be stable. Now, if that's where you are, and that's the mentality of your company or your IT team, whoever happens to be talking about, a couple things to keep in mind. The core engine of SQL Server will always be released after at least 1 year to 2 years in community preview. But more importantly, Microsoft is actively putting those changes into SQL Azure database. So you will see that anything that's coming to on-premise in particular will have been highly vetted and tested inside the Microsoft platform in Azure, as well as in the community through the previews. The next thing, from a security and performance improvements, why would you change? It's pretty straightforward. The security is much improved in SQL Server 2014. Transparent data encryption is available. Your data can be encrypted at rest, helping you meet those compliance rules we talked about before. And in the benchmarks, it's performing 13 times better. So, realistically, the only thing holding you back is going to be those things which say, well, I got to change applications, or I have to work with a vendor who supports this application to see where they are at. They're running in the same scenario. If they're running SQL 2005, you should probably consider the impact of switching vendors if they're not actually going to move forward as well. So let's look at the next option. What if we were to target 2016? Hold on here. There we go. What's that mean? Well, you saw the date for end of life. End of service is April 2016. Right now we're in Community Technology Preview 3 of SQL Server 2016. Should you or should you not target 2016? It realistically leaves a gap, and between when Microsoft goes RTM on 2016 and from that point, from the point they do end of life on 2005. Sorry. So what you need to do is you really need to plan for it. If you look at that realistically and go, if I'm going to go to SQL Server 2016, what does it mean for me? Am I going to risk being out of service for a period of time? Do I go to 2014 and plan for an immediate transition to 2016? That's 2 upgrades essentially. You need to start, paying closely attention to what Microsoft's doing on a release date. They haven't given us a solid release date in 2016 yet. That corresponds to that first quarter of next year. What does it mean? Can we plan for it? If I'd like to be at 2016 at the end of 2016, then realistically that's not a bad thing to be. You could actually do an intermediate update to 2014 or 2012 and get you to lead to 2016 at that point, keeping your support in place but allowing you to move forward. As with any type of upgrade in this scenario, you're always looking at what is it going to impact my business and how long will it take me to get online in those scenarios. So you just got to weigh those out. Now there's a lot of pros to going to 2016. Like I said before, this is not as if it's an untested product. The core pieces of SQL Server are highly tested already at this point and fairly well locked down in this current CTP. If you're looking to take advantage of some of the additional new improvements like the enhanced memory or always encrypted, so if you want to be in a scenario where your data is always encrypted in every which way, these are things that are coming out in 2016 that may be of value to you. The other one is Stretch Database with Microsoft Azure. This is just another technology, an advancement from Microsoft that allows you to reduce your physical footprint on-premise and use Azure storage as an extension of your database platform for archived type data or data that can be archived and referenced at a later time. What about Azure SQL Database? Well, I'm glad you asked. What does that look like? Well, it runs the latest version of SQL Server. So it's already running a lot of the 2016 components. It does not actually, it's kind of interesting because it's this blend of what is have been out on premise, but of that intermediate state of those things that are coming or new. So there's additional functionality available in Azure SQL Database that's not necessarily available in 2014, allowing you to take quicker advantage of what's coming. As they start moving some of these other technologies forward, 2016, you're going to see more and more things added to Azure SQL Database. V12 is the latest version of SQL Database. The interesting part for me was as most of these times patches or versions don't matter. There was a change from V11 to V12, which was a fairly straightforward migration in the cloud, but it does happen on occasion that they change the technologies at such a core level that you do still see an upgrade, but it's a lot different than what you deal with today in upgrading on-premise. Enterprise licensing is built in, so if you're paying for Azure SQL Database, you get enterprise benefits as well. And finally, depending on how and what workloads you're trying to move up into the cloud or move out, you could be looking at a variety of tiers that can support your workload. And by this, we mean that if all your 2005 workloads, if you're generating, these aren't business critical, they've kind of been sitting around, we're not sure what's going to happen, maybe we just push this in the Azure SQL database, we wire stuff up and pay for the lowest level of version of this, and then we can just turn them off as we need to as we move forward. Which of course always brings us to, as you're looking at what you're targeting, not only are we looking at what we're targeting, we're looking at what we're going to do with those SQL 2005 instances. Well, I mean, what is your goal? If you're looking at stuff, you're trying to figure out if you can decommission, archive, or just forget they exist, just turn them off and see what happens. Those are things that you should definitely take in consideration at this time. Because as you move forward into your environment, into your business, you're going to want to make sure that whatever platform you're targeting for your upgrade and moving off 2005, that you're not moving off workloads that don't matter. And this is really, really important, because if you can reduce the footprint of the databases that you support, the servers that you support, obviously maintenance costs will go down and you will have a more efficient environment overall. So there's some options around that depending on which platforms you target to upgrade and how you're looking at upgrading them and what you're trying to get them to. So these are just some of the advantages of going to SQL database. But not all things are rosy when you go to the cloud, of course. There's some options you should consider when you're moving that direction. So hybrid solutions, on-premise applications using cloud data is a hybrid solution. So if I have if I'm sitting here with an ERP solution that I built and it's deployed to desktops in my environment, and now I have all my data sitting in the cloud, you have to consider what that means from a performance standpoint. The database may return data just fine, but the internet may not comply. So at this, when we're talking about moving to the cloud, one of the things you have to consider is tools like ExpressRoute. This helps you optimize your connectivity. Look into it if you're interested in moving to the cloud. You should consider this in any type of work that you're doing in the cloud as a part of the cost of moving to the cloud. What this allows you to do is get you dedicated support, dedicated paths to your data from your on-premise solution, making sure that you're actually able to keep your performance up on those apps. Because at the end of the day, no matter what choice you make, you have to be in a better place, not a worse when you move. So if you're looking at the cloud and you're going to leave your applications on-premise, then you need to make sure that you're considering the impact of ExpressRoute. The other thing about moving to the cloud, in this case, in particular Azure SQL Database, is this feeling of loss of control. Microsoft manages a server. If you and your team like to tightly control the server and work with the bells and whistles and knobs and turn everything on and off, then Azure SQL Database may not be a good choice for you. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't really consider it and look at how it might reduce your overall workload. It still has the typical database tuning things that need to be done, such as indexing and optimizing of queries. All those things are there. And Microsoft's released like the Query Store, which actually looks at all the queries, help you do some more optimizations. These are things that are there to help make it easier to tune and work in Azure SQL Database. But at the end of the day, you are losing some control. You're letting Microsoft manage the server and the physical attributes of the server that you're running on from that perspective. And of course, they offer a whole tier of, number of tiers of service with this, from standard to premium. Premium has they measure high volume, and they can handle your enterprise applications using fast disk. There's a number of ways to optimize, and it gives you the flexibility to not build one massive server environment to support a workload. If 30% of your workloads require little to no resources at the end of the day, you can use Azure SQL Database in that scenario, put them in a tier that's appropriate, and be able to manage that from a tier approach. With Elastic solutions as well, Microsoft's making it so you can actually bundle together your tiers and move resources as you need it. So if you have certain systems that peak at certain times, you're able to leverage kind of the ability to go across all these systems, use their combined resources, and be able to put these things out. These are just some of the advantages of moving to the cloud and impacts you have to take in consideration when you're talking about it. So if you've chosen to stay on-premise, which 40% of you are already targeting SQL Server 2014, now is the time to have, hopefully you've already, at this point in the year, have already talked about the capital expense of building out hardware to support a more modern platform. If you're, as you're moving forward, you need to make sure that you have the hardware configured for what you want to do. You want to make sure the hardware is set up to be optimized for the SQL Server version you're targeting. One of the more important things we see people doing on a regular basis now is, if I beef up my hardware, can I reduce the number of instances of SQL Server I have while supporting the same number of databases? And the answer to that is usually yes. As the performance has improved over time and you're able to take advantage of what new hardware and that gives you, you're able to take advantage of consolidation. So part of that is, hey, can I take one instance and put multiple 2005 databases on it, reducing my licensing footprint, and taking advantage of the hardware and using it, basically using that hardware the best I can, so I'm making the best use of my investment. Absolutely. You can also push multiple instances sharing that same platform. Once again, taking advantage of the licensing opportunities to save money there, as well as better use of the resources you have available. Obviously, hardware has improved substantially since SQL Server 2005 was released, so you're able to take advantage of a lot of those things. The next thing to consider is whether we're going to go virtual or not. But I always find that interesting. A lot of people are starting to do more virtualization, especially as they look at some of their consolidation efforts, and some of that consolidation is hardware consolidation, using platforms like Superdome X and so on that allow you to actually take huge advantage of the platform that's there. You can use extended platform and put as much of the systems on there as you can. So if you're running virtually, you have to consider, am I going to run on or off premise? And realistically, there's some that off premise can be not just Azure. You can be targeting Rackspace or some of the other systems out there that allow you to use a virtualized environment. The thing to remember on SQL Server is that now the virtual servers, it doesn't really matter whether you're on or off premise. As long as you're running a supported virtual platform for SQL Server, VMware, and Hyper-V being the most common two that are used right now, then you should have no trouble. The virtual server platform, if you use your own, it's an on-premise, you're going to build out, maybe you already have a virtualized environment that you're using, and so it's just a matter of, hey, I need to stand up to virtual machines that actually matter for me, and then build that out. The thing about it is you're paying for everything. You got the hardware built in that you're paying for, and all the all the services and resources and maintenance, it's all on you. And that, that may not be a problem. You may have a complete system ready for that and ready to go. However, if you're looking at, I really don't want to go to Azure SQL Database, and I really don't want to buy new hardware, is there an option somewhere in between? Using Microsoft Azure is an option in between. There you can set up virtual machines configured to support SQL Server 2014, 2016. And basically you're paying for your compute and resources. As you elevate the level at which you operate on Microsoft Azure, so the larger systems, you can buy premium storage. There's a lot of optimizations out there to help you deliver on virtual servers working with Microsoft Azure. What you're doing there is you're paying for what you use. If you're not using it, you've turned the virtual machine off for a period of time and you're not going to need it. This might be a transition point. You might decide to stand up virtual machines over the next couple months, migrate things into Azure, to SQL 2014, 2016, set your test and dev environments up to go against that and test to make sure everything's working well before you decide to invest in your own platform. So it could be an intermediate step. The point is that you should be able to take advantage of Azure in a way that makes sense for you, that you can actually license it out. If you have MSDN licenses, for instance, you're going to be able to take advantage of reduced licensing costs by using those Azure credits that you get through your MSDNs, and in some cases your enterprise agreements with Microsoft. Use those, take those to your advantage. Use Azure as a middle ground to test to your new platform. Do I want to try 2014? Do I want to try 2016? Do I want to look at what it would look like if I went from 2014 to 2016 and how much time I need to invest in that? What is the impact of my applications? There are a number of things to consider when you're doing this, and when you take advantage of Azure and virtual machines to do some of this, it reduces the complexity of the the overall process, and allows you the ability to go in and test out these scenarios without having to buy or set up hardware in order to do so. And that's really important as you start to go in a migration standpoint, just to make sure you're testing properly. The second point I'm making on virtual machines is you need to understand the improved licensing options. The combination of software assurance and enterprise edition allows you to license physical cores in your virtual platform that have, as long, basically gives you all your licensed core at the physical level versus virtual core licensing. Typically speaking, you're going to run virtual core licensing inside of virtual machines. But as you get into 2016, software assurance can allow you to apply the licenses at the core level of the underlying virtual system, and then you can set up as many instances as you want and virtual cores as you want above that without the impact of virtual core licensing. I encourage you to look at that. That is a 2016 feature, and it is one of those things you may look at and go, you know what, that cost savings alone in licensing will allow me to move forward quickly and move into the arena of 2016 and save money by taking advantage of the physical core licensing that is available. Microsoft has more information about that on their online, and talk with your licensing specialist that you work with for details and understanding what the cost implications are moving forward. The key there is you will need software assurance to take advantage of that feature. Licensing implications. I'm going to check this question here real quick. I think somebody had a question specifically around this. Let's see. So for Azure SQL Server, do I need to do the migration, or Microsoft will do it for me if my company's paid for licensing? In all scenarios that we have, you will be paying for any effort to upgrade. So there's no Microsoft's going to pay you to upgrade piece. Now, Microsoft does have a number of plans and a number of things out there to help reduce the cost of migrating, but you will have to work with a partner, so you can work with us. We know what Microsoft's out there and what kind of funding is available, but no funding option that I'm aware of will cover a complete migration. So that's something to be aware of. It is possible to get a lot of different funding options applied from Microsoft, but not necessarily enough to cover an entire upgrade of a series of servers. So hopefully that answers your question. I believe it was Chen that was asking that. Forgive me, everyone, I'm fighting a sinus infection, so my cold's catching up to me and my voice is going. So let's talk about some licensing implications. There are some, if you don't know it by now, SQL Server is now core-based licensing, not server-based as it was in 2005. So as you're looking to upgrade, consolidation becomes a really, really important part of your story. And in order to be effective when you're actually doing this upgrade, you should be looking at, okay, so I have to pay for 4 cores no matter what. So if I have this is a very interesting point, I'm going to point out this way. You may not have this scenario, but I was planning to use that dual core, dual processor system to put 2014 on just for now and hold me over. To be clear, that means you'll be paying for 8 cores of licensing. Microsoft doesn't do anything less than a 4-core pack. So as you're working through your licensing options and what it's going to be to license, you have to think in terms of 4-core packs and what that means. I believe that if you go above 4 cores, you can pay, I think, per core beyond 4. But every physical processor that you license with SQL Server will require a minimum of 4 cores. If you are doing virtual server licensing, the same rules apply. So if you are not licensing, running 2016 with software assurance and running the new server-based licensing, I'm not sure if that's going to apply to 2014. Check with your licensing specialist on that. You will pay for, if you do a dual-core virtual machine, you will be paying for 4-core licensing on that. This is very important to understand when you're planning, because at that point, you will be paying for twice as much SQL Server as you have the ability to use in that scenario, even though it's virtual. So when you start looking at what's it going to take for consolidation, if I have a really low use 2005 database, can I put it onto, can I create an instance that handles that, give it 4 cores and enough memory, and basically it'll cover this non-business critical solution? That is what you're targeting. Because if you're not planning for that, then you're going to be stuck paying for licensing you don't want to pay for. So just be really clear on what goes on there. Azure SQL Database is per database licensing unless you're using Elastic Database or Elastic Database Solutions, which allow you to put more databases and share the resources in there. So you want to look at both of those options, but typically, if you start out by estimating what's going to cost you per SQL database, that's going to give you a pretty good understanding. Consolidation is going to be considerably harder to consolidate to Azure SQL database just because you're paying per database. Now, that being said, it could be more cost efficient to use standard tier Azure SQL database to handle non-business critical systems, but systems that you need to keep online. So if you look at doing that, that could reduce your licensing overall impact as well as your hardware impact to put non-critical systems in that scenario. The caveat there is you need to pay attention to your licensing and your usage. And as you go along, there's lots of controls from Microsoft to help you understand what that is, and to make sure that if you need to increase resources, you can do that on the fly. And you can actually switch tiers on the fly as well. So if you end up with what you thought was a non-critical system, but it ends up being a critical system, and you need to go from standard to premium tier, that is it's a very easy thing to do with Microsoft. And usually you switch the tier, and it takes a little bit of time for them to move it over, and you're there. One thing to keep in mind on all this is that Azure SQL Database in this series of things is the only one that includes for free high availability. You're able, disaster recovery, where you're actually putting it into different, you're doing geo-replication, that will require you to pay for the geo-replication features in the additional database. But high availability is built in. 3 copies are always available. You have 4 nines that are available when you run according to Microsoft spec, and that's something to just keep in mind, that that is something you don't have to set up. So if you want high availability, whether it's on Azure VMs or on your local VMs or local hardware, right on the hardware, you will be responsible to set up the high availability solutions with always on and so on if you're running in a non-Azure SQL database scenario. There we go. Now, here's where the hard conversation comes in. The second part of the survey we probably should have run was how many of you are running any of these other services from Microsoft that are part of the SQL Server stack in 2005. You have to understand that the upgrade paths for these tools are not straightforward. As we look at what we can do for analysis services and integration services, if you help you, we're going to guide you through a process that says, hey, in order to get to 2005, we're going to need to upgrade to potentially 2008 or 2012, depending on which tool you're using and what the right path will be. And from there, we'll upgrade to 2014 or 2016. There are substantial changes in both of these products from 2005 to 2016. So we need to be really clear that, you're going to have to test these. And typically speaking, when I've had to do upgrades, that I've done a full series of upgrades from 5 to 8 to 12. When we did those, it required extensive testing on each upgrade step to make sure that we did the upgrade, it worked before what we wanted in the intermediate step, and then we ran the update wizards against it to make sure it was what's the next things we have to take care of, and then upgraded to the final version. Be aware that this is very important to understand, that you need to plan this in your upgrade process. So you may end up with an intermediate step for any of these, and it depends on how you want to look at it, how long-term you want to look at your solution, if it's the endpoint, or if you want to get everything to the same version, what does that look like and what does that mean? At a minimum, you should always be targeting 2014 to get to both of these. Reporting services, there are upgrade paths for that. Our experience is it's not something I would pursue with you. We would look at actually taking the RDL files and upgrading those, and basically do a redeployment of RDL to RDLX and pushing it into the new version of reporting services you want to use. If you're actively using SharePoint integrated reporting, then the path follows more along the line with what you do with SharePoint and which piece of SSRS you put in there. And there's a whole bunch of compatibility things that you need to pay attention to when using integrated to make sure that your SQL Server version that you're using for SharePoint realistically should be the same. So if you have a blended environment where you have SharePoint supporting your standard document management and maybe sites and portals, as well as your BI scenario, which includes your SSRS integration and SSAS integration, you're going to run into some problems with your upgrade. We can help walk you through that, but the reality is it's complex because you really should be running the same version of SQL Server for everything you have in SharePoint, just due to some of the incompatibilities that happens when you try to blend versions. And that includes the SSRS add-in. So if you do the SSRS add-in to, you say you're running, you want to run the 2014 add-in in SharePoint while you're back in those with 2008 databases, would not recommend that. You need to look at, take in consideration what that means, and from a maintenance standpoint, the overall implications. So there's a lot of considerations we've taken for the reporting services update to make sure you're in the right place for that. Other things, chances are if you're running 2005, you're probably running 2003 server, which went end of service in July, meaning you've been running unsupported, unpatched for the better part of 6 months. Bad is what we call that. So you should be targeting Windows Server 2012 R2 at the moment if you're looking for operating system upgrades. That's something that, that your IT team should be actively trying to do if they haven't already moved everything over, but it's something to be aware of. SharePoint, this is where we get into some of the interesting pieces. Depending on how you're using SharePoint, you may find it beneficial to go to 2010 or 2013, check your compatibility levels, make sure you know which SQL Server versions support each of those platforms. 2016 is released in the second quarter of 2016. However, unlike SQL Server where I would tell you, hey, go ahead and push forward with 2016, try to get there, SharePoint, because of the nature of all the things it does, I would definitely wait on it. At least let an update come through. It's been GA'd for, I think they got, the previews are out at the end of this year or have already been out. My concern is with SharePoint always is the fact there's so many moving parts and so many moving components that first service pack is really relevant in this scenario. Or cumulative update depending on which way they choose to do 2016. But be aware that it's coming and it's your call. However, if you're doing document management and very little BI or reporting services integrated are not part of your SharePoint solution, you should absolutely consider Office 365 as a replacement option. It will reduce your overall maintenance headaches around SharePoint and compatibility. For business intelligence, you would shift to a Power BI scenario, and you'd be using Power BI in your environment. So just be aware that that is definitely the direction you would want to head in that scenario, giving you some more analytic capability and some visualizations you don't currently have, and pushing them out. What about SQL Server 2008? If you have a mixed environment with 2005 and 2008, 2008 R2, for that matter, if it's 2012, while these are not into service yet, my recommendation is if you're going to put on a modernization effort, you should try to modernize at least through your 2008 versions. That gives you a lot more room to handle the next set of upgrades. There is not a compelling reason to stay on 2008 at this point unless it's being, because you're running a third-party tool that requires it, in which case put pressure on those vendors. The ideal is to at least be in 2012, and then from there, obviously Microsoft's making releases every 2 years. So if you're able to get to 2014 now, or even make a plan to be on 2016 by the end of next year, you have a lot of room to work with moving forward. And your environment's going to be very modern in that scenario as well. So those are considerations you should make. I would definitely consider 2008 a viable target in this process because it gives you a leap ahead on your modernization efforts, and the advantages of going to them from 2008 to 2014 are substantial. So that would be some of those things I would look at for sure. If you can bring up your 2012 as well, but you may not be able to, or it may be too risky to do so, which is fully understandable. We all rely on these data platforms to run our business. This gives you an option to just get through the modernization effort in one fell swoop and planned accordingly. Developing a plan of attack. So there's some tools out there to help you plan and get to where you need to be. Running the Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkit is pretty much a given for anybody who comes and says, hey, let's help you do this. It's going to review your current architecture. You should be running this. You can find this on Microsoft. They'll make this available to you. It evaluates your current architecture and allows you to see what needs to be upgraded and those components for which you need to do some planning. Beyond that, you should run the upgrade advisors. If you're going to have to go through multiple iterations, I encourage you to run the upgrade advisors for each step. Matter of fact, there's probably value in running upgrade advisors between different versions as well, just to see what the different things tell you. What you want to do is looking for commonality, and you want to eliminate any concerns for upgrades by improving or changing your database as it sits now, and then doing the upgrade. There is no equivalent compatibility mode to run 2005 inside of 2014. Be aware of that. You can run 2008 compatibility mode. However, you should try to get everything up to the right compatibility so you're taking advantage of the tools that are available to you. I understand if you have to do some time to transition, but essentially flipping that bit from an older compatibility mode to the newest is the equivalent of running an upgrade. So if you can plan for it accordingly and get the pieces in place to run on the fully compatible version, it is in your best interest to do so. You should also be looking at developing a roadmap or getting an assessment. These are things that you can take advantage of when you're sitting out there and going, hey, how can I get from where I am today to what I want to do? We can help with that. So this is my ad for the day. So sorry to all of you who didn't want to see an ad. Things that we're doing to help you with that. We are actively working with Microsoft to make sure that we provide the right kind of content and that we do seminars like this to help prepare you as you start to modernize your platform coming off 2005 and moving into one of the more modern data platforms. Check out our website on a regular basis. We will be publishing blogs, and there'll be additional webinars coming on modernization efforts. Some of these will be very specific, related to migrating specific tools. Some are going to be looking at some of the hardware options that are out there. There's a variety of topics that are coming. That list is still being firmed up, and look for that as you see that coming forward. Pragmatic Works has a set of experienced data platform professionals. Upgrading is not foreign to us. Our company is built on tools that help upgrade DTS to SSIS, for instance. We are very familiar with running upgrade processes. We're helping a number of customers through upgrade, consolidation, modernization. We work with them to bring their platforms onto Azure. We've helped the Azure upgrades that have happened. We are doing a lot of work around this. I encourage you to reach out to our sales team. If you already have a rep, reach out to them directly. If you are have not worked with us in the past in this scenario, definitely reach out to sales@pragmaticworks.com to set time for assessment. We have a couple of typical types of assessments we work with. A simple assessment is up to 5 days, so typically we're on site for 3 to 5 days and produce an upgrade path for you. It doesn't do as much detail. We will look at maps, but we'll give you as much as we can. A simple assessment may also be appropriate if you have a small number of database targets that you want to do. In that scenario, we can definitely help with that as well. But if you're looking to do a roadmap and detailed assessment, for instance, you want to land in 2016 by the end of the year, we can definitely work with you on that. And I don't have it up here, but the other thing is when you're working with our sales team, there is some funding from Microsoft available for upgrades, either to certain platforms such as 2016, to Azure, or in some cases different hardware platforms as you're doing a modernization effort like Superdome X and so on that can actually take advantage of what you're doing. And those are partnerships we have with Microsoft and HP and that we can leverage as well. So that's a whole lot of information that's out there. I encourage you to reach out to us if you have other questions or want to dig deeper into this, modernizing your environment. This is, like I said, this is kind of the beginning for us of what we're planning to provide as resources online as we go forward. Please let us know if there's anything you want to pursue beyond that. And I'll look and see if there's any other questions here. I don't think there were. Oh, there we go. I get these questions a little bit bigger here. Well, I'm working through it. Jose, it looks like you were asking 2008 R2 and you're using 2005 compatibility level. Yes, it will be out, and I would encourage you to definitely turn that off if you can, and do a test, and turn that off in a testing environment, see what's broken, because you should go ahead and handle that right now as soon as you can, and then you'll be on 2008, and then the compatibility mode will be supported in there, but if you call Microsoft support, I'm not sure what kind of help they'll be able to give you, to be honest, because 2008 is fully supported. That compatibility mode, they're going to probably recommend you upgrade that. Just to give you there. Let's see, Azure. Okay, so looks like Sajan is asking. You mentioned Azure DB is per database license. So the more DBAs you have, the more you pay for license. You only have one server. That is correct. However, Elastic, look at the Elastic DB options that they're offering. This is a way to mitigate that expense and that cost. But Azure SQL Database is licensed. Well, you're paying for the service at a database level. The Elastic Database service allows you to share some of that, and depending on how much you can put in there will determine your cost savings overall. Any lessons you can provide? SS upgrades from 2005 to 2014. Yeah, the biggest lessons learned is that when you do your first set of migration, you're definitely going to be looking at package-based migration. And if you want to go to project, then take advantage of a lot of the new tools in the SQL Server versions 2012 and above. Excuse me. You're going to find that you can get compatible, but you're going to have issues. There are a number of things that we run into when we start upgrading. If you're using heavy scripting tasks, we have to watch .NET frameworks to make sure that when you migrate up, that the .NET you're using in those scripts is compatible. So there's a lot of considerations there. That leap is not nearly as painful as the leap from 2000 to 2005, but it is painful because between 2008 R2 and 2012, SSIS went through a significant update. So be aware that that's there. Despite all pre-study and analysis, your migrated database is not 100% compatible. Is there a way to go back to? Basically, if you want to run side by side in that scenario, it's probably your best option. You ask about replication. So here's the thing: replication is supported for sure 2012. 2014 to 2005, I'm not sure. I believe that's outside of the support level, so you'd be only in 2012. So I'm finding the only thing that could really prevent you from moving up from 2005 that I'm aware of is if you're using some type of SQL that's been discontinued. I don't have a list in front of me. I would recommend that if that's a problem, I would first see if you can migrate to 2008 R2 and 2005 compatibility mode and see if you can make that upgrade safe. If you can make that upgrade safe, then you can evaluate when you can get rid of 2008 R2 at a later time. But you can run in compatibility mode, and that should help with some of those problems. 2012 to 2014 upgrade on always-on clusters is pretty straightforward. I believe that it's I do not believe there's any issues there where we've seen any issues in that upgrade at all. That one, I'd reach out to our team if you want to get more details on. I don't have those in front of me for always on specifically, but I don't think that you will see those kind of issues out there. We provide 2014 SSIS training. I believe our SSIS training has been updated. Reach out to our marketing group. Liz's contact information I think was around beforehand, and they can get you that information for sure. If we're not upgraded already, we are in the process of upgrading to 2014. I believe it's all there, because usually we train on the latest versions. Oh, SSIS 2008 to 2014, less issues, I guess is the right answer there. SSIS has never had a really clean upgrade path. The easiest way to do an in-place type of upgrade is to open up the project from one version to the other and have a look at what breaks, to be honest. We can look at some of the pieces. I don't think there's as much there. It's still, the routine still changes. There's a 2008 to 2012 path that is well defined and documented for SSIS due to the nature of SSIS. There's substantial changes between those two versions. It would be similar instructions to go to 2014. Yes, all of our Task Factory components have been updated for support to 2014, and 2016 is in progress. So they're already working with the bits from 2016 to be ready for that release as close to the release of the product as possible. But yes, it is already all 2014 compatible. For those, that was for Task Factory. For those of you who may not know, Task Factory is our tools and add-ins for SSIS, and we obviously follow the rhythm with Microsoft and trying to keep up to date on that platform. That appears to be the last of the questions I see. If there's nothing else, I'm going to hand it back to Liz.
All right, great. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. We appreciate it. If you have any questions that you weren't able to get into the questions panel today, please feel free to email me, Liz. It's the email that comes with all your GoToWebinar stuff, and I'll be happy to pass those along to Steve. As always, the recording will be available by the end of the week, and you'll receive a follow-up email tomorrow. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us, and we hope to see you soon. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, everyone.